I never thought much about the houses I cleaned. It was just a job, you know, a way to make some extra cash on weekends. But that all changed last month when I stumbled across something I shouldn't have. I was clearing out another foreclosed home, just like any other day. The musty smell of abandonment filled my nostrils as I worked my way through cluttered rooms. Broken furniture and discarded memories littered every corner. It was sad, really, thinking about the lives that had once filled these empty spaces. That's when I found it, tucked away in a kitchen drawer, nestled among old takeout menus and spare batteries. A burner phone. One of those cheap, prepaid models you can pick up at any gas station. I almost tossed it in the trash, assuming it was dead. But then I noticed the faint glow of the screen. Somehow, after who knows how long, it still had power. I probably should have left it there. Should have just closed that drawer and forgotten all about it. But curiosity got the better of me. I pocketed the phone, telling myself I'd check it out later and then dispose of it properly. No harm in that, right? For a day or two, I completely forgot about my little discovery. Life went on as normal. I cleaned more houses, watched some TV, met up with friends for drinks. The phone sat forgotten in my jacket pocket. Then it happened. I was lounging on my couch, half watching some mindless reality show, when I heard it. A soft buzz, barely audible over the TV. At first, I thought it was my own phone, but when I checked, the screen was dark. That's when I remembered. With a mix of curiosity and slight unease, I pulled out the burner phone. The screen lit up, displaying a new text message. The contact was simply labeled, "Mom. Where are you? Please just call." I stared at those words, a chill creeping up my spine. This wasn't some old message. The timestamp was from just moments ago. How was this possible? The phone shouldn't even have service. Against my better judgment, I started digging. I checked local news sites, scrolling through recent articles. That's when I saw her face. Rachel Meyer, 19 years old, reported missing 2 months prior. Last known location: the very street, the very house where I'd found the phone. I told myself it had to be a coincidence. Maybe the previous owners had left the phone behind when they moved out. Maybe Rachel had nothing to do with it. But deep down, I knew I was grasping at straws. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, my mind racing with possibilities. What if Rachel was still alive somewhere? What if she was trying to reach out? I kept the burner phone on my nightstand, both hoping for and dreading any further messages. Just as I was finally drifting off, a shrill ring pierced the darkness. My heart nearly stopped as I fumbled for the phone, squinting at the bright screen. The caller ID made my blood run cold. Rachel. With trembling fingers, I answered the call. I expected static or maybe silence. What I heard instead was far worse. A girl's voice, barely above a whisper, filled with terror. "He's still here. Don't trust him." The line went dead before I could respond. I sat there in the dark, my pulse pounding in my ears. Who was he? What did she mean by still here? And why contact me, a complete stranger? I wish I could say I did the smart thing, that I took the phone to the police right then and there. But fear and confusion paralyzed me. I convinced myself it had to be some kind of sick prank. Maybe the stress of my job was getting to me, making me imagine things. So I did the unthinkable. I dropped the phone, letting it clatter to the floor, and tried to go back to sleep. I pulled the covers over my head like a child, as if that could shield me from whatever was happening. Just as I was starting to calm down, my own phone chimed. A text message, probably just a friend checking in, I told myself. Nothing to worry about. I've never been so wrong in my life. The image that filled my screen made my stomach lurch. It was me, in the basement of that house where I'd found the phone. But the photo wasn't taken from my perspective. It was taken from behind me, capturing the back of my head as I bent over a box of junk. I scrambled out of bed, turning on every light in my apartment. My hands shook as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. How was this possible? I'd been alone in that basement. I would have noticed if someone else was there, wouldn't I? Sleep was out of the question after that. I spent the rest of the night pacing, jumping at every little sound. By the time dawn broke, I'd made up my mind. I was done with this. I'd take both phones to the police, tell them everything I knew about Rachel, and let them handle it. But when I went to grab the burner phone from where I'd dropped it, my heart sank. It was gone. I tore my room apart, convinced it had just slid under the bed or something. But deep down, I knew the truth. Someone or something had taken it. I never went back to that house. I quit my cleaning job that very day, making up some excuse about a family emergency. I couldn't bear the thought of stepping foot in another abandoned home, wondering what secrets might be lurking in the shadows. For a while, I managed to convince myself it was over, that whatever had happened that night was behind me. I deleted the photo from my phone, changed my number, even considered moving to a new apartment. Anything to put some distance between myself and those terrifying memories. But it wasn't over, not by a long shot. It started about a week later. At exactly 2:44 a.m., my phone buzzed with a new message. No text, just a location pin. It pointed to some remote spot in the woods, miles from anywhere. And the label, two simple words that made my blood run cold. Come home. I deleted it immediately, convincing myself it was just a glitch. But the next night, at the same time, another pin appeared. A different location, but always somewhere isolated. Always with that same chilling invitation. It's been happening every night since then. Sometimes it's an abandoned building. Other times, it's a stretch of deserted highway. But the message is always the same. Come home. I've changed my number 3 times now. I've factory reset my phone, bought a new one, even tried going without a phone altogether. But it doesn't matter. The messages always find me. I don't sleep much these days. I find myself staring at the clock as 2:44 a.m. approaches, dreading that soft buzz. Part of me wants to follow one of those pins, to confront whatever is waiting for me. But the rational part of my brain knows that would be suicide. So here I am, trapped in a waking nightmare, jumping at shadows, afraid to answer my own phone. All because of one stupid decision to pocket an abandoned burner phone. I don't know what happened to Rachel. I don't know who he is or why I've been dragged into this. All I know is that something is out there watching me, waiting for me to let my guard down. And every night, as that clock ticks closer to 2:44, I wonder, will tonight be the night I finally give in and answer the call to come home? I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but I can't keep it bottled up anymore. It's been months since I left that apartment, and I still wake up in a cold sweat, heart racing, convinced I hear those footsteps above me. It all started when I finally got my own place. After years of roommates and shared spaces, I was thrilled to have a top-floor apartment all to myself. The building was old but charming, with creaky hardwood floors and high ceilings. I remember how proud I felt as I unpacked my boxes, arranging my furniture just the way I wanted it. No one else's opinions to consider, no compromises to make, just me and my own little sanctuary. The first few nights were blissful. I reveled in the quiet, staying up late to read or binge-watch shows without worrying about disturbing anyone. But on the 4th night, something changed. I woke up suddenly, disoriented in the darkness. My phone screen glowed, 3:12 a.m., and then I heard it. Slow, deliberate footsteps directly above my head. At first, I thought I was imagining things, still half asleep, but the sound continued, steady and unmistakable. Thump, thump, thump. Someone was walking across the floor of the apartment above mine. In the morning, I convinced myself it was just a dream. But the next night, at exactly 3:12 a.m., I heard it again. This time I was wide awake, staring at the ceiling as those heavy footsteps traced a path overhead. I tried to rationalize it. Old buildings make strange noises, right? Maybe it was just pipes settling or the wind playing tricks. But deep down I knew. Those were footsteps. After a week of sleepless nights, I finally worked up the courage to ask my landlord about it. "Oh, that unit," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "It's been empty for months. Previous tenant moved out back in March, and we haven't found anyone new yet." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But every single night, like clockwork, those footsteps returned. Sometimes they'd last for just a few minutes. Other nights, they'd go on for hours, pacing back and forth, until I thought I'd go mad from the sound. And then things escalated. One night, in addition to the footsteps, I heard a long, drawn-out scraping noise. It sounded exactly like someone dragging heavy furniture across the floor. But how could that be possible in an empty apartment? I confronted my landlord again, practically begging him to check the unit above mine. He looked at me like I was losing my mind. "I'm telling you," he insisted, "there's no one up there. The door's been locked since March. I have the only key." That's when I started recording the sounds. I set up my phone to capture audio all night, determined to prove I wasn't going crazy. For several nights, all I picked up was the usual footsteps. But then, on the 7th night of recording, I caught something that made my blood run cold. The footsteps started as usual at 3:12 a.m., but this time they were followed by 3 slow, deliberate knocks. And then, a voice. Deep and raspy, barely above a whisper, it said my name. Just once. But there was no mistaking it. I didn't sleep at all that night, or the next. I was a wreck, jumping at every little sound, convinced that whatever was up there was trying to communicate with me. Why me? What did it want? I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what was going on up there, so one afternoon, when I was sure the landlord wasn't around, I picked the lock on the upstairs apartment. My hands were shaking so badly I almost couldn't manage it, but finally the door swung open. The smell hit me first, musty and stale, like no one had breathed that air in months. I stepped inside, my footsteps echoing in the emptiness, because that's what it was. Completely, utterly empty. No furniture, no boxes, nothing on the walls, just bare floors and blank walls. I walked through each room, my confusion growing with every step. How could this be? Where was the source of those nightly sounds? And then I saw it, in the thick layer of dust covering the floor, a single pair of footprints. They started in the middle of the living room, as if someone had materialized out of thin air. The tracks led across the room, down the hall, and stopped abruptly at a small door in the ceiling, a crawl space I hadn't noticed before. I stood there, staring up at that door, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. Everything in me screamed to turn around, to run, to never look back. But another part of me, the part that had endured weeks of sleepless nights and growing terror, needed to know what was up there. I reached for the handle of the crawlspace door. My fingers had just brushed against it when I heard a sound that froze me in place. From the other side of that thin wooden barrier came 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I ran. I didn't stop to close the apartment door behind me. I didn't pause to grab anything from my own place. I just ran out of the building, down the street, not stopping until my lungs were burning and my legs felt like jelly. I never went back. I left everything. My clothes, my books, all the little things that made that apartment feel like home. None of it was worth facing whatever was waiting in that crawl space. It's been months now, and I still can't shake the feeling that I narrowly escaped something truly horrifying. I don't know what would have happened if I'd opened that door. I don't want to know. Sometimes late at night, I find myself wondering, if no one lived above me, who was walking every night? Why did the footsteps stop when I knocked back that one time? And what was really behind that crawlspace door I never opened? I don't have answers. I'm not sure I want them. All I know is that I don't even go near that street anymore. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. Some doors better left unopened. Because once you've glimpsed the impossible, once you've heard your name whispered by something that shouldn't exist, you can never truly feel safe again. So if you're reading this and you're looking for a new apartment, take my advice. Always ask about the unit above you, and if you ever hear footsteps when there shouldn't be any, don't investigate, just run, and don't look back. Because some things once seen can never be unseen, and some sounds once heard will haunt you forever. I've always been drawn to the solitude of nature. There's something about the vast expanse of wilderness that calls to me, promising an escape from the constant noise and demands of everyday life. That's why, when I found myself with a rare week off work, I decided to embark on a solo camping trip deep in the heart of the national forest. I wanted to disconnect completely. No phone, no internet, just me and the trees for miles around. The drive out was long, winding through increasingly remote roads until even the radio stations faded to static. By the time I reached the trailhead, the sun was already sinking low on the horizon. I shouldered my heavy pack and set off down the narrow dirt path, relishing the crunch of leaves and twigs beneath my boots. The forest seemed to swallow me up, the dense canopy overhead blocking out most of the fading daylight. After a few hours of hiking, I found a small clearing that looked perfect for setting up camp. I pitched my tent, gathered some firewood, and settled in for the night. That first evening was everything I'd hoped for, peaceful, quiet, with only the gentle rustling of leaves and occasional hoot of an owl to break the silence. I fell asleep easily, lulled by the soft sounds of the forest. The next day passed in a blur of hiking, exploring, and simply existing in nature. I felt my stress melting away with each passing hour, replaced by a deep sense of calm. As night fell once again, I retreated to my tent, looking forward to another restful sleep under the stars. I'm not sure how long I'd been asleep when something jolted me awake. At first, I couldn't place what had disturbed me. The forest was eerily still, without even a whisper of wind. Then I heard it, a voice so soft I almost thought I'd imagined it. Jacob. My blood ran cold. That was my name, whispered just outside the thin fabric of my tent. I lay perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. Maybe I'd dreamed it. Maybe it was just the wind playing tricks on my mind. Jacob. There it was again. Unmistakable this time. The voice was low, almost curious in tone. It didn't sound angry or threatening, but there was something off about it. Something not quite human. I wanted to call out, to demand who was there, but fear kept me silent. My heart was pounding so loudly, I was sure whatever was out there must be able to hear it. I strained my ears, trying to catch any other sound, footsteps, breathing, anything that might give me a clue as to what I was dealing with. Jacob, Jacob, Jacob. The whispers continued, my name repeated over and over like some kind of chant. It seemed to be coming from different directions now, as if the speaker was slowly circling my tent. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing it to stop, praying that this was all just some vivid nightmare I'd wake up from any moment. But I didn't wake up. The whispering continued, sometimes fading to barely audible before swelling again. Always my name, always in that same unsettling tone. I lay there, paralyzed with fear, for what felt like hours. My mind raced through possibilities. Was it another camper playing a cruel joke? A deranged hiker who'd somehow followed me? Or was it something else? Something that shouldn't exist in our world? Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, when I was on the verge of screaming or bolting from my tent, it stopped. The silence that followed was almost as terrifying as the whispers had been. I held my breath, waiting for it to start again, but there was nothing. Eventually I heard the first tentative chirps of birds greeting the dawn, and I realized I'd made it through the night. When the sun finally rose, I cautiously unzipped my tent and peered out. The clearing looked exactly as it had the night before. No signs of disturbance, no footprints, nothing to indicate anyone or anything had been there. For a moment I almost convinced myself it had all been a particularly vivid dream. Then I saw them. Circling my tent, pressed into the soft earth, was a single set of barefoot tracks. They hadn't been there the night before. I was certain of it. My eyes followed the prints, expecting them to lead off into the forest, but they just stopped, as if whoever or whatever had made them had simply vanished into thin air. I've never packed up camp so quickly in my life. My hands shook as I took down the tent and stuffed my gear haphazardly into my backpack. I practically ran back down the trail, not stopping until I reached my car. As I drove away, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something emerging from the tree line. I knew I should probably just go home, try to forget about the whole thing. But something made me stop at the ranger station near the park entrance. I needed to report what had happened, even if they thought I was crazy. Maybe it would help the next person who ventured out there alone. The ranger on duty listened patiently as I recounted my experience, his expression growing increasingly grave. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, just staring at me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. Finally, he spoke. "This voice you heard, did it stop when the birds started singing?" I nodded, surprised by the specificity of his question. "Yeah, actually." "How did you know that?" The ranger's face went pale. He glanced around, as if making sure no one else could overhear, then leaned in close. "You're lucky," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They usually don't stop." A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean, they? Do you know what it was?" But the ranger just shook his head, refusing to elaborate. He thanked me for the report and practically shooed me out of the station, leaving me with far more questions than answers. That was 3 months ago. I haven't been camping since. Hell, I can barely bring myself to go for a walk in the local park. I keep telling myself it was just a strange, one-time occurrence, that I'm safe now in the city, surrounded by people and noise and light. But sometimes, in those quiet moments just before I drift off to sleep, I swear I can hear it again. That soft, curious whisper calling my name from just beyond the walls of my bedroom. And in my dreams, I'm back in that tent, listening to the voice as it circles endlessly, reminding me of one terrifying truth. You're not alone.